Is Lorelia coming to you today from the Never Lose a Deal podcast. I'm also streaming on TikTok. So if you see me looking over to the side, this is my first time doing a podcast here on TikTok. So I thought I would have TikTok on the other side. But as always, this is a podcast where I talk about creative financing and real estate. And so today I want to talk about the takeover. The takeover. Capital One is looking to buy Discover Financial. Now, why is this a big deal? We've had mergers and acquisitions or takeovers in the past, but what makes this different? I talk a lot about, personal credit, business credit, and I also talk a lot about other forms of financing, but I wanted to kind of do a deep dive on this particular topic is because this is not a normal takeover. This is not a normal acquisition. This is not a normal buyout. And so, what makes this different? What makes this particular acquisition or buyout different from others? I mean, let's look at it. I think in the last couple of years, the last purchase of a lending institution happened. I think that was like 2020 or 2021 when American Express purchased Cabbage Financial. And so there wasn't a lot of regulation when it came to that particular buyout. But what makes this different than the others? And this is what I want to talk about today. Now, what makes this different is if you are familiar with Discover. Discover does issue credit cards. It is a credit card lending company, but it is also a payment processor. So with this, if you see me looking down, I just want to follow my notes because I want to make sure I stay on task. I have a tendency to just ramble. But what makes this different is that Discover Financial is a payment processor. And if you do not know what a payment processor is, you think about any credit card that you hold, whether it's personal or business. And on that particular credit card, it will have a Visa logo or it'll have a MasterCard logo, or if it's American Express, it'll have that logo. And if you have a Discover card, it's going to have that logo. Now, we all know that in the credit card landscape, there are different credit card lenders. You can have a Chase card, you can have a Capital One card, you can have a Bank of America card, you can have a Synchrony Bank card. They usually, Synchrony Bank is the lending institution that a lot of times you will see retail cards or Amazon cards. So we are familiar that if you have a credit card, you either have a Visa or a MasterCard. But what a lot of people do not know that if you own a Discover card, not only is Discover the credit card issuer, it is also a payment processor. That is why if you go to a store, some stores will say, we only accept Visa and MasterCard. We don't accept American Express, or we do not accept Discover. The reason why is because they do not process any cards through that processor. Now, going back to Capital One and this big acquisition that they want to be able to move forward with. Well, if the federal government, which is looking at this acquisition very closely, if this particular acquisition do go through, Capital One will now be the number one credit card lender in the credit card lending space. Who now holds the number one spot? It is it is JP Morgan Chase. They are the number one holders. If I follow my notes, the research that I've did as of this year, JP Morgan holds $211 billion in credit cards. If the Capital One and Discover go through, they will be at 267 billion in issuing out credit cards. Not only that, and this is what JP Morgan doesn't have, although it does lead in credit card lending, it doesn't have the processing piece. That is what's making this particular purchase very unique, because now we will have a credit card company which is now a processor. Now the only one who is in that space now is American Express. Of course, we're not talking about Discover, because Discover is a part of the acquisition with Capital One, but that would mean the only player in that space that not only do credit card lending, but also is a payment processor is American Express. They are the only ones, because Visa and MasterCard are not credit card holders. They're the processors. So you have, if I was to give you a very layman's term understanding of this, you have the credit card company, Chase, Bank of America, Synchrony Bank. That's your retail cards, or Amazon. And then, so with that, those are the banks. And within those banks, they have relationships with either Visa or MasterCard, which is the logo that is on the particular credit card that you have. I always like to tell people, Visa, MasterCard, if you have those type of cards, your numbers usually start with 4. MasterCard, I believe, is 5. You look at any American Express, they all start with a particular number. And that is how the payment processors process those credit cards. Now, that would put Capital One in a very dominant position, because now not only are they lending, they are also processing. But bigger than that, why would I even talk about that? Why is this conversation? Number one, is going to change the whole landscape of how the future of credit cards are going to be moving forward. And also, why would this even be conversation? Well, the biggest thing that Capital One is looking at, if you were to really follow what's going on with this acquisition, is the amount of data that Capital One will now have access to. And if you are a business owner, I always tell clients, your most unique, your most profitable asset is not the money that you get in the business. It's not the credit card swipes that a person does with your business. It is the data that you are going to get access with when somebody decides to engage with your business. And a lot of times it is not even financial. A lot of times it can just be an email address. It can just be a physical address. It can be an email address. Any type of information that someone exchanges with you for you to be able to communicate or do business with them is very valuable. Very valuable. Because what a lot of people do not know, and going forward, like I said, this is going to change the whole landscape of the financial services industry. If this is to go through, it's going to change the landscape of the credit card industry, because we live in a time and place where data rules. Data rules. If you look at now with social media knows more about you than you know yourself. That is why people laugh and say, oh, it's AI. A lot of times you can have conversations. You haven't even did the research on your particular phone or on the internet, but you can be having conversations. And I know it's happened to me, so I know it has happened to you. You can be having conversations about a particular product or a particular service or something that you were just having a casual conversation with somebody. And now when you open up your phone, whether it's social media, whether it's a website, you start to now see ads for that particular thing that you were discussing. You didn't even look for it on the internet. It just happened to just come into your feed. Why? Because it's the data. It is the amount of data that they can get from humans. That's why I said the landscape has changed. And that even has to do with this particular acquisition that is going on. Capital One is more concerned, and of course, I'm not sitting in no meetings with Capital One with no executives or what have you. This is just reading, this is just understanding the landscape that we are in. The amount of information that is collected from humans. Currently, right now, I'm streaming from TikTok, and we currently know what's going on with the US government and the social media app TikTok. Why is the US government very concerned with not having a non-US social media app streaming right here on TikTok able to get access to people in the US? The reason why is because of the data. It's the data that they're able to collect from all us users, not a bad or good thing, but all us users that use TikTok, use Facebook, use Instagram, what have you. Data is what is important. Going back to what I earlier talked about, when I talked about the American Express and Cabbage acquisition that took place, like I said, sometime in 2020 or 2021. Cabbage financially, on paper, financials, was in the red. All the years it was in business, it was always in the red. Now, of course, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but why would American Express be interested to acquire a company that had losing financials? Well, with research during that time when I looked into it, it was because of all the data that Cabbage was able to get access to with issuing lending products to those consumers. If you knew anything about Cabbage or ever did business with them, Cabbage specialized with working with people that they provided personal loans, other forms of financing, but they worked with a particular customer that was almost borderline subprime. Not subprime, but borderline subprime. Why would American Express, which is considered a top tier credit card holder, issuer, like when people think American Express, they think premium. They suit up. Let me make sure my credit's good. It got no derogatories. My income is solid. Because they know that American Express is very choosy with who they issue credit to. But why would American Express be interested in purchasing data? Because that's really what they were interested in with the research and articles that I read. Why would they be interested in those customers who was subpar Nine times out of 10, even if those customers tried to apply for credit with American Express, may have not even got approved. It was because of the data. So one of the federal the one of the things that the federal government is concerned with, but it's an advantage for Discover, because Discover is looking at that if they, and once again, this is all information that you can find online and research if you want to fact check, that if the merger or the acquisition, because it's really acquisition, they're acquiring, is to go through, the financial backing that they can get from Capital One will allow them to now enter other markets, hence international market. Currently, right now, Discover Card is only used in America. I think maybe Canada. But if this is to go through, now Discover Financial could have the backing of Capital One in terms of financial resources to do what's necessary to now enter in an international market. Once again, more data will be collected. So, what I want individuals to take from this conversation is that we live in a different world. We live in a data based world. Everything is data. Primarily on the Never Lose a Deal podcast, I talk a lot about creative financing and real estate. And even in the realm of those industries, data is what matters. Data is what matters. Your ability to be able to purchase real estate, do real estate deals, decide to enter in different real estate markets that are outside the norm of what most people are used to, as well as creative financing, being able to leverage different forms of financing is going to require data. It is not a eeny, meeny, miny, mo type of deal, even though people look at it like that, but it's not eeny, meeny, miny, mo. It is really based on the data that you have to be able to make a decision to move forward with any type of financing that you want to be able to leverage and use to purchase real estate, as well as your ability to look and be able to move forward with any type of real estate deal that you're looking to do. So that is why being able to follow or have an understanding of what's going on with this acquisition is really going to change the trajectory of the financial services industry. There's people who, in the credit, in the personal credit circles, who, because capital, I mean, not Credit One, I apologize. Capital One has never been looked upon as a premium card. It's a so-so card. But when you think about premium cards, most people are thinking of, the Chase cards, the BOA, of course, the American Express. Capital One is really not in the premium space when it comes to acquiring that particular credit card. I know for me, when I primarily worked a lot with helping people rebuild their credit, I've always considered Capital One to be that card that it's not a low tier card like First Premiers or the Credit Ones, but it's like a second or third tier card that you can get to be able to reestablish credit. But with this particular acquisition that is going that hopefully will take place, according to reports, if it is to go through, it will be in another year, so in 2025 or maybe later in 2024. It will now be considered that premium card, because now, like I said, based on the numbers, and I told you the billions, it is going to exceed JP Morgan Chase. It will now be that premier card. Will now be that premium card. So that is why I said this acquisition that's going on is now it's really going to change the landscape when it comes to financial services. Because like I said, this is not a normal credit card um, credit card acquisition. This is a case of you have a credit card company that is looking to be in the payment processing space. Outside of Discover, the only company that we have like that is American Express. So for those who like, oh, well, what about Chase? No, Chase is a credit card lending company. They're a bank, they lend out, they have lending that is issued as a credit card, but they're not the processor. The processor is either Visa or MasterCard. Same way with any other card. Bank of America, they are the bank. They provide the lending, but they have a processor, meaning they have a relationship with um Visa and MasterCard. But another piece that I want to throw in there, that the reports are saying that if Capital One is to move forward and go forward with this acquisition and it gets approved by the federal government, where will that leave Capital One? Will they still have those relationships with Visa or MasterCard? Or will they do away with those relationships and just have the Discover logo? Now, of course, financially, reports are saying that doesn't make sense. So now it becomes of what concessions could they give to Visa and MasterCard, or maybe vice versa, what concessions can Visa and MasterCard give them to be able to now have three processors that they can get access to? Because if you think historically, American Express is only one processor. You got American Express card, the processor is Amex. It's not Visa, it's not MasterCard. And I know for people who are credit card holders, they never really thought to look this deep into when it comes to the processing side. All they know is, hey, I got a credit card and I could just swipe. Hey, I got a this type of card and I could just swipe. And they may look at, oh, let me see if it, if they have Visa, or if they accept MasterCard. But if this acquisition was to go through with Capital One and Discover, what is that going to look like? Like, now I understand why the federal government is looking, because what would your card be issued as? Will you still be using the Discover logo? Which, of course, that would be very limiting because a lot of places don't accept Discover. Or will you now have the ability to have Cap One cards, that could possibly have the Discover logo, or the Visa, or the MasterCard logo? I don't know if they have Visa. I know all the Capital One cards I have, they all have MasterCard. So I don't even know if they're in the Visa space. But now, what would that look like? So those are all things to consider. Um, those are all things to consider as we look at this more closely. Because, like I said, this changes a lot of things in the financial services industry. And as always, on this podcast, talking about creative financing, this is a form of financing. Talking about real estate, not all podcasts will be directly related to real estate, but I thought this would be kind of a change in direction because, once again, you got a lot of people in the online space. They're talking about credit cards. They're talking about how to get them, how to repair your credit, but no one is really looking at big picture things. And if you are a business owner, that's why I said, if you're a business owner and you are the business owner that does help individuals rebuild their credit, or you help individuals with business credit and you help them to get access to financing, understand what's more valuable is not the your ability to accept their money, take their money, and do the service. But what's more important is the data that you're going to be able to get access to when you are helping those customers and clients, as well as the clients understand that when you're working with individuals, that is the information that is more valuable. Them having the ability to, know who you are, getting your credit card company. So it goes vice versa. But understand that we live in a time and space now, whereas data is everything. Everything's about data. And if you do not know, start to pay attention with things that you do, how you interact online, how, and it's not to look at it as a bad thing, but understand the changes that are going on in the world. Because a lot of people don't even know that there's changes going on around them, and they don't even know that even exists. Because why? Because it has become second nature. We just do things just to do them. You go to a car, they ask you, hey, you want to sign up for our rewards program? You get 10% off when you purchase, or your next purchase you get whatever. If it's a restaurant, you get a free slice of pizza or a free soda, or if you do it today, we'll take $20 off your bill. The list goes on and on. You go to a store, hey, if you sign up today, you get 10% off. And we just freely give these names and our email addresses. Like I said, it's not to be a bad thing, but understand it's the data that is more important. Capital One's not doing this so they can just process a lot of credit cards. Like, if people just think, oh, they just want to, be able to extend credit to people and process credit cards and make money. No, no, that's a minuscule profit center that they're looking at. Is it a profit center? Yes. Is it on their financials? Yes. But what is more valuable is all the data that they are going to be able to get from the Discover card, of all all the people that were extended credit from Discover. But what's even bigger is now the processing. It's the ability to process a Discover card. So once again, this is Lorelia. As always, you want to learn more about me, hit the subscribe button here on YouTube if you are listening to this podcast on YouTube. If you are listening to the different podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple, iHeartMedia, Amazon, please follow the podcast, subscribe, whatever they ask you to do, so you can be notified when there is a new upload added on to the streaming platforms. As always, to learn more about me, you can go to www.neverloseadeal.com, your place for creative financing and real estate. Until the next time, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.